Our idea is that schools are a very good place to teach young people how to participate politically. And one way to do that is to engage them in discussions of highly controversial political issues. We carefully selected 21 schools in 3 states, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And in those schools, we found teachers who were affiliated with civic education organizations that were promoting a particular kind of civic education, the discussion of highly controversial issues. And then we found teachers in those schools or in close schools who weren't doing that, so we could have a comparison group.
What we did find is that when teachers do that, it is time well spent in the classroom, that students really enjoy it, that it makes them more interested in politics. They leave the class with a deeper knowledge of democracy. And even we followed students after the study and found that the classes in which there were really rich discussions they remembered those discussions 2 and 4 years out. So it was really an example of really powerful learning.
Well, the main takeaway is that this kind of civic education, teaching young people how to discuss these highly controversial political issues, issues that are authentic to the day, really works if it's done well. That being said, we found that teachers who are good at this have had a lot of preparation. They've typically had a very good teacher education program that they've participated in and lots of ongoing professional development. So this is not something that novice teachers are able to do kind of right into their teaching career. Although we did find that teachers got much better at this the more training they received, the more practice they had. Well, we found that as polarization in America has increased, that has affected what's going on inside of schools, that schools are more likely to be ideologically homogenous. So we found classes in which, most of the students had grown up in a community that was, predominantly Republican or predominantly Democratic. And in those classrooms, teachers had to work in different ways to engage students in high-quality discussion than they did in classrooms where there was authentically occurring ideological diversity. So one of our big takeaways was that polarization is certainly affecting schools. However, the teachers in our study who were doing the best job were really working hard to make sure that the worst effects of polarization, that you only hear one perspective, that you kind of marinate in a stew of ideological sameness, that those effects were blunted because teachers were going to such great lengths to make sure that students would hear differing points of view.
There's a difference between the teacher who is lecturing and sharing their view in front of the class and not giving students an opportunity to respond, and the teachers that we studied, which were teachers who were really being very careful about how they were orchestrating the discussion. They were giving students materials with competing points of view, and they were designing instruction so that students were talking to each other. And so that's very different when students are allowed to talk with their classmates about a political issue versus going home and saying, well, my teacher was sort of imposing the view on the entire class.
Well, we found students changing their minds on all sorts of things, in large part because there are a lot of students who came into class without having an opinion on some of these issues. These students were 17 and 18 years old, and being undecided can really be a great learning asset. But we also found students who had pretty firm views, and they might have the same views at the end of the discussion, but they might have different reasons, or they might have a better understanding of why there are people who disagree with them. And we think that's a win, that if people can understand that there is disagreement, that the people who disagree might also have good reasons, that those people are not bad people, we shouldn't demonize them, I think that's an important thing.
One thing that is really important about this award is that social studies education in the United States is often plays second fiddle to STEM and language arts, both very important. But as a result of sort of the testing, the accountability regimes and moves towards STEM, this is sort of social studies gets less attention. But civic education and social studies education is really important, and I hope that the award shines a light on the general public and educators that we need to pay more attention to how we're preparing young people for democratic life.
You don't want to say that schools alone can be tasked with the problem of solving what's ailing our democracy, but they can be part of the solution. And certainly we don't want them to be part of the problem. So the worst case scenario would be if schools just kind of reified what was going on in the world outside of school. And these teachers who went to great lengths to make sure that students were learning about points of view that were different from their own, often different from what they were hearing at home, those teachers were really doing the hard work of producing young people who I hope will create a better democracy than what we've created.